I went to a Workers Over Billionaires Labor Day protest today in East Portland, and I want to tell you how it went. Now, while I definitely want to describe what the event was like, what was the vibe there, what was the reception from the cars that were driving past, etc., it's not actually going to be the focus of this video, so I hope that you can hang on with me because I have two kind of greater points that I want to make about why we are still doing these kind of protest events and why I think they are going to become increasingly important. And that reason probably won't be the thing that you think. Now, there are labor protests all over the country that are going on today. The theme is workers over billionaires, right? At a time when the regime and the oligarchy are attempting to strip back worker rights, decrease our ability to organize, to advocate, to have fair pay, to have a good quality of life, it's more important than ever that any of us, whether or not we are in a union, support union organizing, support the labor movement. And to understand that just like the fight is the fascists versus everybody else, the fight is the super rich versus everybody else. They're the same thing. It's the same thing that's going on. The billionaires, the oligarchs, the corporations, they feed and support the fascists, even if you think that they don't. They are all working to protect their own power and wealth at the cost of all of the rest of us, of our quality of life, our humanity, our rights. So while Indivisible is not explicitly a pro-labor organization, it's really important for all of us to stand in solidarity with and partner with unions and labor organizers because we are all engaged in the same fight. So I am part of the safety team for my local Indivisible. That means I help direct traffic or document or deal with de-escalation, things like that. Now, there's a really big protest downtown, and there were also a number of other protests in the surrounding suburbs. I mean, there are protests everywhere, y'all. I keep saying this. There's protests literally every day in the United States. It just doesn't get captured by the news. The protests today actually were. There was somebody from Coin6 News that was at our protest event. I think there were about 130 people at our location, understanding that there were multiple other protests going on at the exact same time. There's a big, pro-union event at Oaks Park at the same time. And obviously the massive downtown protest as well. And I know sometimes people can really fixate on a head count, trying to get as many people as possible at one protest, when actually it can be far more impactful, raise the visibility significantly to have smaller protests in areas that don't normally have that kind of public display of opposition against fascism, that don't typically have that kind of very public demonstration of support for the working class, for workers' rights. It can be incredibly impactful to have those smaller protests that are out in the periphery. And we got a lot of feedback from our event that it was really important to have a presence in that part of East Portland that typically has very low visibility. It's an area where, if you're not from Portland, Oregon, the farther you move east, as you're moving out toward, like Sandy and Gresham and heading out that way, there tends to be a very different kind of political makeup versus some of the more affluent parts of town. At the same time, East Portland, once you're out in the numbers, it's an area with a much larger immigrant population, a much larger population of the people who are targeted by the regime, who are targeted by MAGA and don't feel that they have the ability to speak out, right? It's not safe for them to do so. And so it's really important that those of us who are more protected stand up for them when they're not able to. And it's really important that they see that there are people in solidarity with them who are willing to make a very visible stand against fascism and a very visible stand in support of those folks. I'm realizing now that I'm almost 4 minutes in that this will probably end up being a 2-part video. I don't care. I'm not known for my brevity. So originally our entire family was going to attend, but because of an event that happened to some of us a couple of days ago, it ended up only being me. And I know it can be really difficult for people to attend a protest all by themselves. For me, I was going and showing up and partnering with my friends on the safety team, and actually saw a number of my neighbors there, people that I've seen at other protests, and also people who recognize me because, which is frankly still really weird for me. And I'm sorry that I'm very, very awkward in person. A couple of people who knew that I was going to be there because I post about protest events that my Indivisible chapter is doing on my Blue Sky. Y'all, somebody brought me a jar of lacto-fermented pickles, not even knowing that that's one of my favorite foods. I'm pretty sure she has no idea how obsessed with pickles I am and what an awesome gift that was. Someone else gave me a pin from an artist who I think watches my content, named Karen Hallian. Watching this on YouTube, I will link to her shop. It's a little octopus that says "Do not obey in advance." And I just want to say, if you come to a protest event all by yourself and you, like me, are awkward and nervous and, not sure how to plug in, you can always come find me. You can always hang out with me. We can be awkward together. But if you are going to a protest somewhere, where I'm not going to be there, and you're nervous about going all by yourself, just remember that we've got to risk it for a biscuit, right? We've got to get outside of our comfort zone. And I have found that if I just strike up conversations with people around me, like, oh my gosh, can I look at the pins on your hat? Or, tell me about your sign. Or do you live in this part of town? People at these events want to connect with you. They want to build relationships. Y'all, we're all there because we care about the same things. We have shared values and shared goals. The protest itself is really important for raising visibility about what's happening. Protests like this are also important because they are recruiting events. There were people at the protest who were just there walking their dog, saw us all protesting, went to the table where you could make your own sign, made their sign, and joined the protest. When they started out today, they were like, we're going to walk our dogs in the park. And they ended up making signs and participating in the protest. And then it's like, oh, here, let me give you the sign up information for Indivisible. Come connect with us. Like, it doesn't end here. We have regular meetings. We do all kinds of good work in the city. So as a community organizer putting on these kind of events, we want to think about how we can capture people, how we can get them plugged in. Right, so there's visibility and there's recruitment. Both of those on their own, those are enough reasons to have a protest. The third reason is relationship building. We need each other more than ever. We need to connect with people where we live in our real lives more than ever if we're going to stop fascism. And also, if we are going to help protect and support the most vulnerable and help them get through this period in our history, we've got to be there. We've got to show up in real life, in person, meet people, build relationships, figure out how to support each other. I think I'm going to cover more of that in the next video because I actually have a story, an interaction that I had today that I really, really want to talk about, but I'll save it for the next one. The protest today for our group was a honk and wave. The big one downtown was an actual march. Now, I love those big protests in Portland. Typically, when you do the whole march, it ends up being around 3.5 or 4 miles, and a lot of it is in direct sunshine. We're shutting down the highways, we're marching over the bridges, but that's not necessarily accessible for everybody. Honk and waves are really accessible. A lot of people who are protesting right now are people who are deeply impacted by what the regime is doing. That's families with young children. That's elderly folks who are often using assistance devices, walkers, canes. They need to have a chair to sit in. And obviously also disabled folks. We've got to make sure that our events, some portion of events that we are planning, have accessibility for folks who are in wheelchairs, for folks who have mobility issues. The cuts to Medicaid and all kinds of other services are devastating for disabled Americans. I'll also add the park that our safety team director chose for this event had an ADA accessible bathroom, and that's something to consider as well. Honk and waves then can be far more accessible because you're stationary and you are protesting to the cars that are driving by. It also means that your message reaches people who might not otherwise be interfacing with protests, right? I know that the protests in downtown Portland are really big, but not that many folks actually live down there. And if you're shutting down the streets, it's very easy to avoid and not actually interact with that protest at all. But if it's on a busy street, especially in a part of town where there might be a lot more, like MAGAs or like a lot more people who just don't understand what's going on, you have so much visibility, so much interaction that you can have when you have a honk and wave. I do want to say we got a couple of guys who were a bit of a problem. We had one kind of very distressed guy with a big MAGA flag on the back of his truck who had to speed by really fast and let us all know that he wasn't happy. There was some dude in a yellow truck who, turned on his coal roller and belted black smoke all over protesters. Like, bless your heart, son, that you thought that was going to deter any of us. But overwhelmingly, the response from cars that went by was tons of support, right? Honk and wave. They honk, we wave, and woo! It's this back and forth mutual support of each other. I'm going to leave that there for now. I want to come back in the next video and talk about an interaction that I had at the protest today that is really shaping my activism going forward.